I live in a small college town where people drive old sedans and hang out at 24-hour diners. Nothing fancy happens here. I study full-time and live a pretty regular student life, coffee in hand, books stacked up on my desk, always behind on readings. One Thursday afternoon after class, my friend Sarah convinced me to download a dating app. She said I needed a distraction, something to cut the monotony of lectures and exams. I wasn't really into that kind of thing, but I gave in. I matched with a guy named Shane. He looked clean cut, had a confident smile and nothing flashy. His messages were short but funny. He made jokes about traffic and college life, and there was a sarcastic edge to everything he said. It felt like he was testing how I'd respond, like he wanted to see if I'd get his humor. I didn't mind. We started talking regularly. A week later, we met up at a roadside coffee place near campus. It wasn't busy, just a couple of truckers and an older couple playing cards. He ordered a black coffee. I got a chai. We sat outside near the parking lot, the sound of cars passing on the main road in the background. Our conversation lasted almost 2 hours. He talked about a show we both liked, about how terrible the last season was, and we laughed about fan theories. He seemed curious about my classes, asked about my favorite professors. Nothing about him felt off just. A guy who asked a lot of questions and kept eye contact a bit longer than usual. I figured he was just into deep conversations. After that, we started meeting up after classes, nothing too serious. Maybe a walk around the park or grabbing a sandwich from a food truck. Over the next couple of weeks, we hung out maybe 5 or 6 times, always short meetups, always in public. He'd message me about something random, some meme or article, and then suggest we grab something quick. It was convenient, not too intense. He told me he worked remotely doing some kind of data work, but I never asked too much. I liked that he wasn't overly pushy, at least in the beginning. If I said I had too much homework, he'd just say, "All right, next time," and that was that. Then I started noticing small things. They didn't seem important at first, like how he asked about people I mentioned, my roommate, classmates, even the guy who sold us coffee once. He'd repeat their names, ask what they were like, whether I trusted them. Sometimes it sounded like a joke. "You sure your lab partner's not a weirdo?" he'd say, half laughing. But the way he said it was different. His tone would drop a little, and his eyes would narrow, like he was actually trying to figure out something. He also brought up strange ideas in casual conversation, like how the government watches through phone mics, or how major companies are run by the same 5 families. He said this stuff with a smirk, like he didn't fully believe it himself. One time, he leaned closer and said, "They control more than you think, everything." I laughed, thought it was just one of those ironic internet things. I didn't take it seriously. I didn't want to seem uptight, so I brushed it off. Then something happened that I couldn't ignore. A girl I know from my literature class, Melissa, pulled me aside after lecture. She said she'd seen Shane in her building a few nights ago. He was on the stairs, talking to himself, or yelling, actually. She said he was saying something about keeping the message clean and they're not listening. She said it looked like he was practicing for a play or something, but it creeped her out. Her exact words were, "He was too into it." I tried to laugh it off and said maybe he was just messing around. Melissa tends to exaggerate, but it stuck with me. I kept thinking about it. After that, I paid closer attention when we texted. I noticed he messaged me every couple of hours, sometimes even more. "Where you at? What class now? You going to that library spot again?" At first, I replied because it seemed like normal conversation, but he always followed up with more questions, even when I gave short answers. One day, I told him I'd be busy the whole evening, just to have some space. He still texted me 4 times. "Just checking you home yet? Want to grab something later?" I started to feel uneasy, like it wasn't just interest anymore. It felt more like he was keeping tabs. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I kept telling myself he was just awkward or overenthusiastic, but I stopped suggesting meetups. He didn't. He kept offering. "Want to walk down to the river spot? Let's get fries at Sam's. I'm near your place, want to say hi." I made excuses, said I had group work or family stuff. He'd always respond politely, but then ask again a few hours later. One night, I saw him standing across the street from my apartment. That evening, he messaged me saying we had to talk. He said it couldn't wait. that it was extremely important, and he needed me to hear him out. At first, I told him I was tired and had work to do, but he kept pushing. The way he worded it sounded desperate. He said things were getting worse and people were watching us. I didn't want to go to his place, so I said we could meet at the park where we usually walked public, well lit. If things got too weird, I could just leave. He was already waiting when I got there, standing near the bench where we usually sat. His hands were stuffed in his jacket pockets, and he didn't say hi, just looked around like he was checking if anyone followed me. When I asked what was going on, he launched straight into eye talking about how people around us weren't who they seemed, how everything was connected, and how something terrible was coming. He looked at me like he needed me to understand, said we had to protect ourselves and that I had to take it seriously. I tried to change the subject, said I'd had a long day and didn't really want to get into conspiracy stuff. That seemed to set him off. He started pacing, saying I wasn't listening, that everyone always ignores the signs. He raised his voice a little, not shouting, but it was sharp. I told him I had to go. He just stared for a second, then nodded without saying anything. I walked away fast and didn't look back. After that, I decided I couldn't keep pretending it was harmless. I stopped answering his messages. He kept sending them anyway, long texts, some several paragraphs. He talked about the truth, about how I'd wake up soon, and how I was still in danger. I felt my stomach knot every time my phone buzzed. Eventually, I blocked him. It felt like the only way to breathe again. Even then, I kept hearing things. A classmate told me they saw him near the campus bookstore talking to himself. Another girl said she got weird vibes from him when they'd been in the same study group weeks earlier. No one knew him well, but everyone had a weird story. It wasn't comforting, yet made it worse, like I should have seen more than I did. A few days later, I was scrolling through local news on my phone during lunch when I saw his name. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I saw his photo. It was him. The headline said he'd been arrested after holding a family member hostage with a knife. The article said he tried to force them to admit the truth about the world. My hands were shaking. I put the phone down and just stared at the table. I didn't want to believe it, but it explained everything: the urgency, the paranoia, the way he looked at people, like he was sizing them up for something they didn't know about. Apparently, his cousin had managed to text 911 while he was ranting. The police came fast and talked him down before anyone was hurt. They said he surrendered quietly once they convinced him they were on his side. The whole town buzzed after that. Everyone had something to say, people who'd seen him around, professors who remembered him from class, even the guy from the coffee truck. I remembered those pauses in his speech, those strange silences when we'd talk, how he'd suddenly stop mid-sentence and just watch people pass by. I always assumed he was tired or distracted. I never imagined it was anything more. For a few days, my phone blew up. Friends, classmates, 7 people I hadn't spoken to in months messaged me. Isn't this the guy you were seeing? Were you safe? Are you okay? I turned off notifications. I couldn't answer the questions. I didn't want to think about what might have happened if I'd kept meeting up with him. I deleted the dating app. It was the first thing I did after the news broke. Then I changed my number. I didn't want to take any chances in case he somehow found a way to reach out. I told my mom everything. She was quiet for a long time, then told me to talk to someone at school. I booked a session with the campus therapist, even though I wasn't sure what I'd say. Talking helped more than I expected. The counselor didn't ask me to explain everything, just helped me go over what happened step by step. She said sometimes our minds pick up on danger before we understand it logically, that I wasn't wrong for missing the signs, that people like him don't always look dangerous. I started to understand that just because someone acts normal doesn't mean they are that surface level charm can hide something deeper. I stopped blaming myself for not walking away sooner. I didn't do anything wrong by giving someone the benefit of the doubt, but I also learned that I don't have to wait until I'm scared to set a boundary. If something feels off, I can step away, no apology needed. It's been a few months now. I've started spending time with people, again going out in groups, staying cautious but not closed off. I don't bring it up unless someone asks, and even then, I keep it brief. We went out a few times, then things got weird. I got out. Even now, Sometimes I catch myself watching people a little longer than I used to, waiting to see if something shifts in their expression, in their tone. It's not fear exactly, it's more like a habit. I know I'm more careful now. I don't ignore the small signs. It still doesn't fully make sense to me how someone who laughed at dumb jokes and shared music recommendations could reach a point like that, but I've stopped trying to explain it. I just remember how close it got. That's enough. Story 2. My name is Ashley. I'm a professional photographer, mostly portraits and lifestyle shoots. I've always liked catching people in natural, unplanned angles. It tells more of a story than any post picture ever could. I live in a hot, sunny city where sunglasses aren't just fashion, they're survival gear. Everyone has AC units running 24/7s, and the pavement burns if you step on it barefoot. It's the kind of place where life feels slow, but people still rush. After a long break from dating, I decided to try one of those apps again, not with any big expectations. I just wanted to meet new people, maybe spark something real, or just expand my circle. I matched with a guy named Roy. His profile stood out immediately. The photos looked like magazine spreads, perfect lighting, sharp angles, not a single awkward pose. Either he had a great photographer, or he knew exactly how to present himself. He wrote that he worked in PR and loved traveling, meeting new people, opening the world together, as he put it. That line sounded a bit rehearsed, but I let it go. I figured someone in PR probably talked like that for a living. We decided to meet in a park near a big circular fountain where kids run through the spray during summer. It was late afternoon, the light was soft, golden, perfect for shooting, actually. Roy showed up in a tailored beige suit, expensive loafers, a slim leather bag slung over one shoulder. The guy looked like he walked straight off a runway. He smiled like he was used to getting his way, but his manner wasn't pushy. He was smooth-talked about his clients, recent trips, collaborations with designers. Every now and then, he'd casually mention how he just loved connecting with creatives and finding ways to build something bigger than both people involved. It sounded vague, but he delivered it with confidence. I mentioned my studio and my current projects. He nodded like he was already planning a full campaign. It felt a bit fast, but his energy was contagious. He told me he always wanted fresh visuals for his brand, something natural but sharp, nothing fake. I said, maybe we could try a test shoot. He lit up at that, like I just offered him a free ticket somewhere. I gave him the address, and we agreed on Thursday afternoon. Thursday came fast. I prepped the studio in the morning, cleared out some backdrops, set up softboxes. It's a compact space above an old bookstore, downtown tight staircase, squeaky wooden floor, but it gets the job done. Roy showed up exactly on time. Again, dressed to kill's limb dark jeans, white shirt, no wrinkles. And he smelled like some designer cologne I couldn't name but definitely recognized. He walked around the studio like he'd been in dozens, just like it, no questions, no hesitation. Let's make something clean, he said, flashing his perfect teeth. I started with a neutral gray background. His poses were natural, like he'd done this 1,000 times. A few times, I didn't even have to direct him. He changed expressions effortlessly every few frames. Smiling, serious, playful. He made jokes between shots, asked about the equipment, commented on my lenses, complimented my lighting. He said he had some ideas for campaigns he wanted to pitch, and maybe I could be part of them. I didn't take it too seriously, but it was flattering. I hadn't had many collaborations like that since the pandemic hit. After the shoot, I went through the files and picked out a few of the best one-scropped, adjusted colors and shared a couple on my Instagram story, tagging him. Nothing big, just a little promo. His following was decent, around 15. Canned, he reposted them with a bunch of flame emojis and captions like magic in motion and fresh perspective. It boosted my visibility, which I appreciated. Then things started getting strange. It began with a DM late that night. A woman I didn't know sent me a messagino, hello, no intro just. Be careful with Roy. I replied, asking what she meant. She sent a longer message. Said he'd been living in her apartment for almost 3 months. That he was supposed to move out tomorrow, but kept making excuses every time she brought it up. He'd charm his way around it. She said he'd also promised to help her with a marketing project and never followed through. That caught my attention. Another woman messaged the next day, similar story, different city, same pattern. They met through the app. He talked about big plans, took some nice pictures, even showed up at her shoots offering advice. She said he stayed with her for a while, between leases, but never left, claimed his place was getting fumigated. Eventually, she asked him to go, and he got passive aggressive, telling her she was blocking his creative process. I didn't respond to that one immediate, just sat with it. I went back through our messages, our meeting spot, the way he looked around my studio like he was evaluating its usefulness more than admiring it. I started noticing things I hadn't clocked at first, how he always made vague references, never gave concrete details. He never said where he lived exactly, just things like on the east side or just outside the city. I never asked because at the time it didn't seem weird. Another woman sent me screenshots of their chats. They looked nearly identical to mine, same phrases, same energy. That open the world together line popped up again. I felt my stomach twist. I didn't confront him. I just stopped replying. A few hours later, he texted, "Had a great time at the shoot. Want to brainstorm more ideas this weekend?" I didn't answer. Then he messaged again, "Can I come by? I have something I want to show you, won't take long." I started doing a bit of digging, nothing too intense at first, just curiosity. But the more I looked, the more I found. I reached out to the two girls who had messaged me earlier. They were open to talk. We ended up having a video call one evening, and what they shared made everything click into place. Both of them said the same thing. Roy always left something behind, a duffel bag, a pair of designer shoes, a camera lens, something that made it feel like he had a reason to come back. He never stole money outright, but over time, he started living like the apartment was his, using their kitchens, like they were stocked for him. Long showers, borrowing the car just for a quick errand. One of them said he had even invited people over to her place without asking, claiming it was a good networking opportunity. They both described the same routine. At first, he seemed helpful, interested, invested. Then came the stories how his last job had delayed payment, how his apartment lease had fallen through, how his bank messed up a transfer. Always temporary, always fixable soon, but it never was. He leaned hard on pity without asking for money directly, just enough to make them feel guilty for questioning him. One girl said he used to sit on her couch and scroll job listings while drinking the coffee she bought. He'd sigh and say things like, "I just need one break-home person to believe in me." It sounded sweet at first, then exhausting. I sat in silence after the call ended. I felt stupid, to be honest, not just for letting him in, but for almost inviting him deeper into my life. He had used the same smile, the same words, the same promises. Nothing about it was personal, just a method, a strategy. I thought back to our shoot. He wasn't just relaxed, he was scanning, measuring the space, testing my boundaries. I'd felt flattered by his attention. That attention was his tool. I wasn't the only one, probably not even the last one. I felt angry not just at him, but at myself. The photos, the compliments, the excitement, it was all part of the setup. He didn't need money, he needed hosts, sponsors, people to carry the weight of his lifestyle while he kept selling this image of success. That's when I realized he'd probably already started planning his next move, maybe even had a couple more people on the hook. I canceled all upcoming shoots, took a day to clean out my studio, deleted a few shared posts, and blocked his number. Then I messaged Roy. I told him I wanted to talk one last time somewhere public. We met at a cafe near the main boulevard, busy. Open place with big windows and noise. I picked a table near the door. He walked in wearing a charcoal blazer, like he'd come straight from a job interview, smiling like nothing had changed. "Hey, good to see you again," he said, sitting down fast like we were on a schedule. I didn't smile back, I just looked at him and said, "I know what you're doing." His smile flickered, then came back weaker this time. "Doing what?" I didn't explain. I told him I wasn't interested in arguments, just facts. I mentioned the other women, their messages, the things he left behind, the stories he told. He shook his head and leaned forward. "They're obsessed," he said. "You don't know them like I do. They twist things." I stayed quiet. He kept going, said I was being unfair, that he thought we had a real connection. that maybe the others misread him, but that didn't mean I had to jump on some hate train. He was calm, but I saw the panic behind Either's voice tightened. His hands started tapping the table. I told him I wasn't here to debate. I said I knew about the way he stayed with people without paying rent, how he took advantage of their spaces. I said I knew about the third girl too. That's when he dropped the act. His posture sank. He didn't try to defend anymore, just stared past me for a moment, then stood up without a word and walked out. I followed him with my eyes as he got into a silver sedan, slammed the door, and peeled off without looking back. That was the last time I saw him. I felt a mix of relief and something else, not sadness, not really, just the weight of being so close to falling into something that could have drained me not just financially, but mentally. It took me days to stop replaying everything he said, wondering how much of it was real. Probably none of it. I reached out to a couple of friends who work in legal stuff, asked if anything he did was illegal, if there was a way to press charges. But without theft, physical abuse, or signed contracts, it was a dead end. He never forced anyone, he just nudged, suggested, took space until it felt normal. All I could do was leave warnings. I wrote anonymous posts on local boards and in groups where creatives gather shared what happened, left out names, just described the pattern. A few people reached out to thank me, said they'd seen someone similar. I deactivated my dating profile not long after. I just didn't want to be out there again, not right away. I needed space to get my head right. I kept thinking about how I'd fallen for the image, his looks, his words, the feeling of being chosen. I didn't want to admit it, but I'd wanted someone impressive, someone polished. I ignored the small signs because I liked the way it felt. The other girls told me it took them week 7 months to recover, not from losing him, but from doubting themselves, from feeling used, from trying to explain it to people who didn't get how it worked. I don't blame myself now, not fully. I see what happened. I see how easy it is to trust someone who says all the right things and looks like they mean it. Now, I double check everything. I don't get swept up in compliments or visions of big futures. If someone makes big promises too early, I pause the end, I watch their actions. Not their smiles, not their Instagram, just what they do day by day. Sometimes, the most polished surface hides someone who never plans to carry their own weight. It kept happening, random drop-ins. She'd show up near the shop, outside the gym I go to twice a week. Once, she was at the gas station across from my apartment, pretending not to see me while I filled up my tank. I didn't say anything, I just drove off. I told myself it was harmless, maybe she was just lonely, maybe she didn't mean anything by it. But I started changing my habits, leaving work at different times, parking on different streets, switching gyms. I blocked her number for a few days. But then she emailed me, said she was sorry if she came on too strong, that she just really liked me and didn't want to mess it up. I unblocked her, sent a short message back. It's fine, just need some space. She replied, okay, but she didn't give me space. I started seeing Maria more often. She was normal, easy to talk to, fun. One Saturday, we were at a small diner just outside town, and I spotted a silver car parked across the street. Nothing weird about the car itself, just that it had the same dent in the passenger side door I remembered from when Kelly once asked me to help her fix a minor scrape. I didn't say anything to Maria, but I kept watching the car. After 15 minutes, it drove off. Back at the shop, one of the guys said, "Hey, your girlfriend was here again." He was joking, but I asked what he meant. He said she came by looking for me, said she brought lunch. I hadn't told her I'd be working that day. I texted her later and she said she thought it'd be a nice surprise. I didn't respond. 2 days later, I caught her standing behind the building, near where we keep the old tires. One night, I got home late after a quiet dinner with Maria. I parked down the block and walked up the short path to my apartment. The porch light was off. As I fumbled for my keys, I noticed someone standing by the door. It was Kelly. She didn't say anything at first, just stared. Her arms were crossed, and she wasn't dressed like someone just passing by. She looked like she'd been standing there a while. I hadn't given her my address. I never even said what part of town I lived in. "Where were you?" she asked. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but her eyes didn't blink. I waited. I didn't answer right away. I was frozen. She stepped closer, her face in the glow from a nearby window. She looked tired, messy hair, makeup smudged, but there was something else in her eyes. Something cold and sharp. I was out, I said, keeping my voice even. You can't just show up here. She didn't move, just stood there, breathing slowly, like she was trying not to explode. I thought we were real, she said. I thought you were different. I didn't reply. I slowly reached for the doorknob. And that's when she finally turned and walked away, but not before muttering, "You'll see." The next day, around noon, I got a call from Maria. She was yelling, panicked. "Some woman is Harry. She's screaming outside my house." I dropped everything and ran to my truck. It took me less than 15 minutes to get there. When I pulled up, Kelly was already on Maria's porch, pounding on the door. In her right hand, she held what looked like a heavy metal bar, maybe a crowbar. Her other hand was clenched in a fist. Maria had locked the door, thank God, but I could hear her shouting from inside. I jumped out of the truck and ran to the porch. "Kelly, stop!" She turned and looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Her face was red, her jaw clenched. "You told her lies," she said. "You made me look crazy." I held out my hands. "Let's talk, but not here. Please, let's go." She took a step back, and that's when I noticed the back seat of her car. Through the rear window, I saw a red gas can and a long zipped case seat, looked like the kind hunters use for rifles. My mouth went dry. "Kelly," I said again, quieter, "please, let's go somewhere else." She didn't move, just stared at the door like she wanted to smash it open. Then she swung the bar at the wood, and it cracked with a loud thud. Maria screamed again from inside. I lunged forward and grabbed Kelly's arm. "Stop!" She yanked away and turned the bar to admit it and swing it, just held it in front of her chest like a warning. Her breathing was fast now, uneven. "You're just like him," she hissed, "all of you." I backed away slowly, trying not to escalate it. We stood there for maybe 10 seconds, neither of us moving. Then a door across the street opened, and someone shouted, "Hey, what's going on?" I glanced over and saw an older guy on the phone, probably calling the cops. Kelly saw him too. She turned and ran to her car, threw the door open, and peeled out of the driveway. I didn't chase her. I just stood there, watching the taillights disappear. When the police showed up, I gave them everything, her name, the messages, what I'd seen in her car. I tried to explain how it had all started, but the whole thing sounded surreal when I said it out loud. Maria was shaking, still locked inside. She didn't want to come out. I didn't blame her. That night, I deleted all my social media accounts, every dating app, changed my phone number. I stopped going out after dark. I'd sit in my apartment with the lights off, listening for cars pulling up, for footsteps outside the door. For a while, I didn't sleep more than a couple of hours a night. Weeks passed, then a month. I didn't hear from Kelly again. I packed up and moved to a different part of the city, new place. New job, smaller shop, fewer people, more privacy. I needed a fresh start somewhere I could breathe without looking over my shoulder. There were nights I'd think about it all, how careless I'd been. I didn't know Kelly, not really. I knew a few facts, a few sad stories, but I didn't try to understand her. I just wanted attention. And when it got too heavy, I tried to back out like it was nothing. What she did wasn't okay. It was dangerous. But I still think about that look in her eyes, the way she talked about being abandoned, the way she'd show up out of nowhere, always alone. A friend of mine told me to see someone, a therapist. At first, I brushed it off, but eventually I went. I sat down, told the whole story, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to pretend I was fine. I'm still working on myself, trying to understand why I acted the way I did, why I let it all go on for so long. I don't date anymore, not for now. I want to learn how to be real with people, to stop running from things just because they're uncomfortable. I hope Kelly finds help too. I hope someone steps in and sees through her anger and fear, because underneath it all, I think there's just someone who got broken one too many times, someone who didn't know where else to put the pain. I still remember the sound of that metal bar hitting Maria's door, the crack it made, the way everything slowed down for a second, like a warning shot I almost didn't hear in time. Now, I do everything I can to make sure I never ignore signs like that again.